Right, well, the Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews is digging in again today on his reopening roadmap, despite calls from a large number of virus experts, including the original Melbourne University modellers, who say it should be now urgently revised. The federal government, yet again, says they stand willing to help, but of course it's up to the Premier to accept help.
I think that the improvements in contact tracing and the statements from the University of Melbourne mean we really have the opportunity now to work with Victoria, for them to work with the business community, the academic and medical communities and the Commonwealth to redo the roadmap to have achievable targets which will help people with their mental health and their social wellbeing and their economic wellbeing.
Joining me now for his analysis on this and much more, the Australian's political editor, Dennis Shanahan. Dennis, thank you as always for your time. We've now got just not one, but a number of these Melbourne University epidemiologists. They helped put together the modelling that then went to the Premier, including the head of medicine, the Dean, Professor Kapoor, who says, and I want to quote, "We urge the government to keep refining the modellings, and when new information in mid-September is fed into such a model, perhaps a different set of trade-offs may seem more optimal." Now, why won't he back down and revise this if that's now what the experts are saying?
Well, Peter, it's pretty hard for Daniel Andrews to back down on anything, really. He's committed to himself so many times to so many hardline positions as well. He's now become completely obsessed with the health outcome, having failed it so badly before, and he wants to be the man who makes the decisions, but really won't admit he's making the decisions. We've seen on these, the curfew, the police didn't want it, the health officials didn't want it. In Victoria, unlike the other states, we've seen that the medical officer is not the man in charge of the health response. It's the health bureaucrats. We've been saying this for weeks and months, and yet Daniel Andrews doesn't change and says he's got the right man doing the right job. Well, it seems to me with the failure of tracing, the failure with tracking, the quarantine breakdowns, the aged care situation, the right people are not in the right places. And I think that the epidemiologists who are coming out now and saying, look, we actually supplied the figures. This is not the right way to go. And you'd have to say, of all the federal ministers, Greg Hunt has been outstanding in his handling of the pandemic. I don't mean just in a service sense, but in a political sense. He has actually worked with all the state health ministers, the state health departments, and provided federal departmental help, ADF help, where it's needed. And yet he's now come out, I think reluctantly, to say, Daniel Andrews, please change your roadmap.
There's a lot of federal Labor MPs, particularly those obviously that I'm talking to in Victoria, concerned about the brand damage that Andrews is inflicting because, of course, the state election isn't due until the end of 2022. These federal Labor MPs fear that they'll be at the polls before then, and they're worried that the voters in Victoria will give them the clip around the ears that they might have been reserving for state Labor. Is that a fair point, do you think? And just because the economic damage too, I think, will be more real next year than it will be perhaps by the end of this year.
Oh, yeah, look, as far as the timing of the election is concerned, it's ironical that at the last election, Bill Shorten was concerned that Daniel Andrews' popularity was so high, it was a high watermark for Labor and very hard for them to pick up seats in Victoria. Now, that turned out to be the truth. What we're now looking at is that although Daniel Andrews still has strong support, as do the other premiers, for border closures on health grounds, he's clearly not travelling as well as he was. But unlike Western Australia, Queensland, we've already seen the Northern Territory, they are actually going to have state or territory elections and the ACT before the federal election. Labor actually has to come after Daniel Andrews in Victoria. And if I was Anthony Albanese, I'd be worried about that brand damage to the Labor Party generally and the economic situation, not just in Victoria, but also in Queensland, where the economics will be felt much more strongly after the election, even if Annastacia Palaszczuk is returned. The downturn will be felt in Queensland much more, and that will be a message that federal Labor will have to wear in Queensland and Victoria.
You're absolutely right, because of course the incompetence in Victoria hangs around Labor's necks, and the strident border closures in Queensland will hang around Annastacia Palaszczuk's neck well into next year, when people maybe have forgotten the immediate health concerns. There was polling out today, now it was commissioned by coal company New Hope, but it shows that she's on the nose and going backwards in a number of key marginal seats ahead of next month's election. It's credible polling, Dennis, and it suggests a uniform swing. Now, swings are never uniform, but it predicts a uniform swing of about 5% against the government. So this will come down to a real war in those marginals, and she's taking water, I think, over the perception, or in my case, the real lack of compassion last week. This would be concerning her strategists.
Yes, look, I think that the fundamental problem for Annastacia Palaszczuk, and look, it's hard for every opposition at the moment. It's hard to go up against a government. People are afraid of change. They want to support leaders who protect their health. And that's what Annastacia Palaszczuk said today. She said, I'm prepared to lose the election if I can stand up for Queenslanders' health. Mark McGowan in Western Australia is saying the same thing. These are good, strong political points to make. But I think that there are some underlying, ongoing problems which were clear from the federal election, which haven't gone away. The regional areas, the anti-mining view. Now, this polling was, yes, taken by a mining company, but they set it up front. But it also confirmed other polling that came out at the same time from less interested parties, saying that there is a problem for the Labor. We've clearly seen a real problem for Labor with the departure of so many ministers who are just saying, oh, sorry, we're going now. These were some of the strongest talents in the Queensland state government, and they've just pulled the pin. You know,
big
5
issues.
weeks before the election. It looks bad. And I think that these fundamental problems are probably of greater concern for Annastacia Palaszczuk electorally, and a greater risk for Labor at government than that popularity she has in guarding the borders. I think her saying, I'm prepared to lose the election while I guard the borders, could be a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It's a line straight out of a focus group, Dennis Shanahan. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Peter.
You're not pulling the wool over our eyes.